Hello and welcome to the Delirium engine, where we walk without rhythm and don't attract the worm. Today I'm with two of my good friends, one of which is a constant and the other is new. The Spartan sits across from me today.
Yep.
And beside me sits Dr. Predox, a name that we invented today. I myself am Bryant, also known as Mekhalikhar, and this is I Character, a series about discovering what makes certain aspects that we've defined as essential to each character, pretty much by dint of it being a character, and figuring out what the most successful way to approach that part of the character. What is the most successful way to approach that part of the character for whatever you're trying to do with the character? Today, or last week, I should say, we discussed backstory, how to toot your own horn, and it was a pretty good discussion. And this week, we are talking about our weapon of choice. Walk without rhythm. Now, let me just go into it on kind of how this works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain more or less what we mean by the weapon of choice. And then we're going to see if we can figure out together sort of the best way to approach it with your character. What is the most successful weapon of choice for your character when you've produced it? And then we will probably enter the donjon and see what he has to say. And we'll comment or react to whatever Dawn has to say. The Dawn. So, let me just start. Weapon of choice. Generally speaking, for most characters, whether it be in some fantasy Dungeons and Dragons game, or whether it be in some, any other genre, a character will have some sort of personal choice of weapon. A weapon of choice. Jesus, Murphy. Yeah, wow.
We got
going deep.
That's the title.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys.
We're done,
like
boys.
and subscribe.
Wrap
We
it
got
up.
there. Anyway.
Best podcast yet.
Yeah. Best podcast yet.
Best guest ever.
Yeah. Best guest ever. Thanks, Mr. Predox, for coming on the show. I hope everyone has a great night. Sorry for being late by a week. You can see the production values have raised by leaps and bounds as a result. Anyway.
Yep.
Okay. Back on topic. All
around.
horribly cringy jokes aside. So, every character kind of has one of these. The sort of immediate thinking is that it is a literal weapon, and most often it is. You know, for example, a character might have a hammer be their weapon of choice. But it doesn't have to be literal. It can be something like, I negotiate with people, so negotiation is my weapon of choice. Or thinking is my weapon of choice. Or banking, I don't know, wrestling.
Yeah.
It can be something a little bit more abstract. It's usually basically the way that people deal with their problems in the game, or the preferred method of fighting, I guess would be. So, because most of these games are about conflict and conflict resolution.
Yeah.
So someone who takes a character who uses a hammer to resolve their conflict will obviously be different from a character who uses running to resolve their conflicts. Okay, so this is where the idea of weapon of choice comes in. And so what we hope to get from this discussion, I'm guessing then, is what is the best weapon of choice to represent the character you're looking for, right? There's obviously better options. There's obviously not necessarily more powerful options, but better options to represent your character.
Yeah.
And I would deem this discussion a success if we can sort of figure out how a player best chooses their weapon for the character they're going for. So, with that said, why don't we open it up to the newbie, Dr. Predox?
Oh, I get to go second.
Yeah.
For like the first
Oh.
time in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Guest speaker going first.
Yeah, we're gonna let the guest speaker go first. Well, maybe I just like you less than Dr. Predox, and maybe I just like you more than Mr. Dagwood. Maybe that's how it's all gonna go,
I see how it is.
or maybe not.
Yeah, I understand. Just
But
over here in the
also,
corner.
fun fact, Mr. Dr. Predox, you'll notice that the Spartan, he has his own little animation. So you come on the show enough, guess what? You get rewarded with a fancy, punchy animation that makes you look like a cool guy and not some dotted line that says you're under construction.
I actually really like that because it's almost like he failed a science experiment and now he's just a line man.
Like an invisible man?
Yeah, like his weapon of choice was science and he obviously fucked up. Right?
Yeah, there
Like,
you go.
Yeah, that could be a thing.
it's
That
like,
could be the
boom,
thing.
I'm invisible.
So,
Shit.
Forever.
So what do you think? What is the best way to approach a character's weapon of choice when making the character?
I think the best way to kind of do it is like, I like rooting things in backstory. Honestly, like you can't just be like, one day I picked up a stick and now I'm gonna be a stick master. It's just like I don't know, like you like Thor and you're like, this hammer is magic and it helps you and it gives you purpose and then you lose it and you're like, shit, well, who am I? And it's like you're not a god of hammers, you're a god of thunder. Like I don't know, it should say something about you, right? Like it shouldn't just be like, here's a sword because I really like that it has a sharp point and people just die when I swing it at them.
Why not? Okay. So what you're saying then is backstory. But what do you think? If certain things are more effective than others, what determines what's more effective?
Playstyle, I think.
So, like, why would someone... Okay, I guess the question I would ask to you right away would be, why would someone pick a two-handed greatsword over a knife? Why would somebody pick stealth over running? Why would somebody pick brute force as their weapon of choice over negotiation?
I think each weapon style kind of gives you a creative way to play the game. Like, for example, in video games and stuff, they give you like magic, they give you range, and they give you melee weapons. That's the word I was looking for. Such a weird word. But each one kind of like you have to be like for range and magic, you gotta be in a certain place, right? You gotta be far away and like shooting shit. Whereas melee, you're gonna be like up close and personal, and like your weapon choice really dictates not only how you make decisions, but like where you are in a battle, or even the armor that you wear. For example, like in some games, like you have arcane spell failure when you're wearing metal and you're a mage, right? And you're like, well, shit, like I can't do that. So like rules might dictate what you can and can't do with weapons, obviously. But I think like you put out a cool thing like where negotiation is a weapon. Like I'm that's cool. I've never even heard of that concept, but I can imagine that guy plays a lot differently than the guy who decided to pick the two-handed sword, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. That makes sense. Alright, the Spartan.
What's up?
What's the, what do you think? How do you choose your weapon of choice for your character?
Well, it depends on what game you're playing. Like,
Okay, we're
more-
playing an Egyptian game.
Okay, well,
We're slaves.
slaves.
Yeah, we're
Well,
fighting against the evil pharaoh.
Then
Fuck that guy.
you probably won't have access to much effective weaponry, like great swords or like decent weapons.
Okay, well, what makes you choose a rock over a sickle? Like, what kind of character are you trying to create when you choose a rock instead of a sickle, or when you choose a sickle instead of a rock, or when you choose your bare fists? Like, how do you make this choice?
Well,
And what determines if that choice is better or not?
I think, like Dr. Predox said, it comes down to how you want to play the game. If you want to be like an up close brawler person, you might want to go with just your hands because you can get in more swings. But if you want to be like a quick get in and get out stealthy person, a sickle might work better. It depends on how you personally want to play the game.
All right. Well, what does that say about your character? That you are an up close and personal person. Like, I want to kill people with a sword rather than I want to kill people with a thrown rock.
Well,
What does it say about your character? Does it say anything about your character? Am
Yeah.
I completely off the beaten trail here?
No, that's it. Your weapon does say something about your character. Somebody who uses like a great hammer or something,
Okay.
like to go bash skulls, is going to be a wildly different character from somebody who talks to people for a living. Like,
All things being the same, one guy talks, the other guy uses a bashing hammer.
yeah, you might be able to get to the same place at, like, both characters might get to the same place doing their own thing, but how they go about it will be wildly different because one is literally beating his way to the front line and the other one's talking his way to the front line.
Yeah. So, but let's try to get more acutely, and we'll go to the doctor here. Someone chooses a short sword, and the exact same player, like two characters that are equal, exactly the same in every way, right? Except they have different weapons of choice. One character has chosen a short sword, one character has chosen a double-handed greatsword. What is the difference between these two characters? What do you think? Like it's a bit subjective, but like it does say something, right?
True.
Like you see these two things, and they impose a different image in your head.
Well,
You know, what image do they impose? What are we trying to do here?
to me, the guy with the regular short sword would be somebody with more finesse, more subtlety.
Okay.
But the great sword would be just go at it, like balls to the wall.
Yeah, and that would be the product of the weapon, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's, like, just you've chosen the great sword would probably be more finessey than the guy who's using the great axe, and the great axe would be more finessey than the guy who's using the cudgel, like the giant piece of freaking rock attached to a stick. You know.
Yeah, it when you think about it, like I brought up like two identical pictures and gave one a short sword and one a big two-hander in my head. And yeah, like looking at both in my mind, it's like one gives me the feeling of a more brutish frontline fighter, and the other one's more of a secondary, like stealth flanking type of thing.
See, I think duck and move gladiator versus like
Oh yeah, that works too.
yeah, versus some sort of like just swing, walk forward.
Yeah.
Kind of like I don't really think about what I'm doing other than swing my sword. Well, and these tropes I think are fairly subjective, but it does create a direction for your character, right? You know, the difference between say a two-handed sword and a scythe. You know, they're similar weapons, but one does say something different about your character than the other.
Yeah.
Right? You know, diplomacy, negotiation, like if you're both using diplomacy, like negotiation versus intimidation are very different. You know, the face that your character is making in the little portrait you draw of them is going to be very different when you've chosen your weapon of choice to be intimidation versus negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so when the question, or I would like to try to get to is, you're building your character, you haven't chosen your weapon of choice yet. You've built other objects, or maybe when do you choose your weapon of choice? Do you choose it first? Do you choose it last? Like, is it maybe the first thing you choose?
I wouldn't say so. Your
Well-
weapon of choice would be one of the last things you choose, or maybe like late middle.
You think so?
Yeah, because you kind of want to come up with what what class, let's say, you want to play as, and that can have a wide range of different weaponry. They can all give roughly the same image, though. Like a guy with a great axe, or a guy with a great sword, or a guy with a big ass hammer. Like, you all get fairly similar feels from it, right?
Mhm.
But they are technically different weapons.
Yeah.
So
But then you give different. They evoke different imagery, like
Yeah.
not just because they look different, but because they have a different sort of, like a guy wearing with a scimitar is different than a guy with a longsword, even though they're essentially just longswords.
it's true, but the difference between that is less than what it would be between a bow and arrow and a sword.
Yeah, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But so in order to make the most effective choice for your character, right? Like, why? See, I would argue, honestly, it's the first choice you make.
I would agree, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I would argue that the first choice in any character you make is probably going to be the weapon of choice. Because, as you guys said, it determines what you want to play with. So take the character you're making right now, for example, right?
Okay.
You haven't even developed too much about the character, at least I haven't heard too much about the character, but I do know it likes to use vicissitude, right? So the weapon of choice is flesh crafting, for those who didn't know what vicissitude was.
Yes.
But I know nothing else about the character, but now I have a concept of what this character is in my head. Like, it's built on the weapon of choice. You know, I'm going to be a master negotiator, and so immediately I say a master negotiator, I go, okay, and then I can extrapolate from the weapon of choice what my character is becoming.
Well, yeah. But...
Whereas if you make it in the middle, it's just like, I would like to be, you know, I want to be an elf queen. It's like, okay, and if you haven't sort of determined the way you want to solve problems, you know, it's not a wrong choice. Like, it's not wrong to choose it in the middle or whatever. Like, I don't think there is a wrong order of operations. Like, if you want to play a bucket with legs, you can choose a bucket with legs, and you can later on decide that the bucket of legs solves its problem through intimidation. But, you know, I feel like almost organically people will just go like, how do I want to win? And the weapon of choice is how they want to win, right? Like, even when you use, like, say, Dungeons and Dragons or any other system, in fact, it doesn't matter. When they're looking at the stats and they're like, okay, what mechanic do I want to abuse in order to make my super stat character the best?
Yeah.
You know, that's a weapon of choice option. But it does say something about your character. And obviously you want to be a winner. So, like, we're not talking about your weapon of choice option being the best, the most damage dice. Like, that's just system to system. It doesn't matter. But what I am saying is maybe certain weapons of choice are not as effective as others when building your character. So, for example, you know, I'm building, like, let's go back to Bernard the Barbarian.
Well, I have an example that I'm actually doing right now.
Okay, you go with your example.
Currently, I've picked up Skyrim again.
Okay, yeah.
Everyone picks that game up after a while.
I've been wanting to play Fallout, which is the same game, but post-apocalypse.
Essentially, yeah. And I've decided to make a stealth character, but instead of using what would normally be a proper weapon, like a single-hander or dagger or just a bow and arrow, I'm going with a two-handed axe.
Okay, yeah.
Which gives me, like, no bonuses except ×2 damage and sneak attacks.
Yeah.
So the weapon doesn't really fit the play style, but I'm doing it anyway.
Sure, but does it, like, when you look at your character being a sneaky guy with a giant two-handed axe, does it look right?
No, it looks wrong.
Yeah.
It looks so wrong.
Wow. And
it's almost a funny kind of wrong.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't work.
No.
But it does.
Yeah, the way the mechanics work, yeah.
Yeah, the great axe just does so much damage.
Yeah. And whatever, that's fine. But,
Yeah.
like...
Even with Skyrim, if I can interject really quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the game, like, what you brought up with the game mechanics is really interesting, because my first character was also a rogue, and I, like, went through and, like, I really liked just the dagger. I didn't use any range whatsoever. But the game stacks on with damage the more roguelike you play. Like, if you go through the dagger set, like, list, you get ×2, ×16, and ×28 for crit damage on a dagger.
Yeah.
And then there's ways to build that up to, like, ×46 or, like, I don't know. It's ridiculous. You can go up and one-shot things. But it rewards you for playing towards this imagery that the game developers already have. And I find a lot of, like, because I have a lot of experience in, like, Dungeons & Dragons, not so much this system. But that system does the exact same thing. It rewards you for playing towards the images the game has already built for you. Like, if you want to be, like, a charisma dude and stuff, like, it says right in the charisma thing, like, the higher that is, the more good-looking you are.
Yeah.
And that seems to be something that you find in games everywhere. Like, even in Fable's good and bad system, you look amazing when you're a good guy, but you look horrible when you're a bad guy. Like, when you think Darth Vader, you don't think handsome, right? Like, and I find, to circle back to weapon choice determines a lot of these things for characters, and I would agree with Brian that, like, the first thing you pick aside from like what you want to play is like what weapon you're going to go about doing things. Like the soldier versus the commander, for example. The soldier would use, you know, all your martial weapons and stuff, like the short swords and stuff. Like I get that impression. But somebody who is a negotiator would look and play very much differently, even though they're going towards the quote-unquote same front line. Like the negotiator would rise through the ranks and talk to somebody and be leading a charge, and their map might be actually like planning the battle system that soldier is in. But just because you've decided to pick your weapon, things are drastically changed even though you're in the same setting.
True. Well, I don't know. For me, I don't really pick a specific weapon. Like, I'll decide early on whether or not I want to be like magic, ranged, or melee, but that's usually as far as I go until I get a character fleshed out. Like, what I want to do, what my backstory and whatever stuff is, and then I'll pinpoint down like what specific weapon style I want to do.
Okay, so like maybe then that's maybe there's a hidden truth there. Maybe weapon of choice is not just one choice, but a variety of choices, like becoming more acute as the process continues. So, for example, let me just there was an NPC I thought of, okay, and for the game that I'm running right now, and his name is Orkwit or something like that. But his weapon of choice is violence. Okay, so he's like a standard D&D military kind of character, all right?
Okay.
And I wanted him to use a large, like almost like an axe or a cleaver or something.
Or halberd?
No, just more like a cleaver. But either way,
Okay.
I wanted to use that. All
Okay.
right, so I'm like, okay, this is what he's got. He's got the big weapon, right? So he's all about big, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, so from there I can extrapolate like what kind of a character he is, and then I'm like, okay, well we've explored as far as I want to explore with the fact that he has a cleaver. What kind of cleaver now are we talking about? And I chose glass on stick style obsidian shards, like a piece of wood with like obsidian all around it.
Yeah, no, that's rough stuff.
Yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, so this guy, and then I'm like, okay, that sounds like a really cool thing. Like the image in my head was like, this is what I want, and then from there I extrapolate, okay, well that tells me a lot about his personality. Like, this is a guy who's primitive but effective, and he will leave grievous lasting wounds on anybody who gets in his way. Like, to win is to lose, like,
Yeah.
unless it's him, unless he's the one who's winning, right? And so like that's that to me. And then I finished his name. I'm like, okay, his name was Orkwit because it was like a name that I thought was kind of a fun name. It's like, I'm not very smart, but whatever, I'm an orc. And I named him, the post name is The Obsidian Chopper. And so I was like, okay, Orkwit the Obsidian Chopper. And he's a giant orc with a giant obsidian chopper. I thought that was sweet. And so like the whole image, like this image came in my head, and you could see what he's coming from. And it all came from Weapon of Choice. Like, Weapon of Choice, in a way, was the, like... It was almost like the guide to exploring exploring me making my character.
Yeah.
Or making this NPC. And I made 3 of them essentially doing the same thing. Maybe faster than that explanation.
Yeah.
But the 3 NPCs I made up was I made the winemaker, whose weapon of choice was wine and necromancy. The second one was Orkwit the Obsidian Chopper. And the third one was he had a really weird name. It was like Socrata. It's like Socraticles or something like that. Like, it was like a weird sounded Greek kind of name.
Yeah.
And he was he uses knowledge as his weapon of choice, and he was supposed to be a magical assassin. Like, I made little quotes for them, and his was like, "Knowledge is power. I'm glad to get to know you."
Oh, that's I like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah, so like that, and so you can get this idea where it's like obviously that's with the sort of less tangible weapon of choice, like knowledge.
Yeah.
You have to have something like a quote like that. Like I like Orcfist has a quote too. It was like, "I'm in charge now, fetch me chopper." Or the winemaker was like, "Drink the wine and your men will have the power of 2." Right? So Like you could see just with those little quotes that how they sort of acted. But this stemmed from like I wanted a winemaker, I wanted a guy with a big axe, and I wanted a guy who uses knowledge. Like knowledge is power. Yeah. And then you extrapolate, how do I want knowledge to be power? Well, he's going to be an assassin. And so he uses the knowledge of people as a tool for his assassinations. Like it doesn't matter what tool he ends up using, he will use the most efficient tool.
Yeah.
So usually I find a way to make it somebody deal with themselves by being smarter than them and setting up a scenario where they basically have an accident.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? So, but yeah, with the less tangible ones, you probably have to do something like a quote or get a little description of what you're talking about. So it's like, with that, it's knowledge, but it's like the knowledge of people's personal habits maybe, or like, or if you wanted to change it up, like a different kind of character, maybe it would be something like, I buy and sell knowledge, right? Like an intelligence broker. Yeah. Would be like, knowledge is his weapon of choice, but the trade in knowledge is his weapon of choice, where instead of like hoarding knowledge for the sake of using it as a weapon. I don't know. But to me, that's almost like I said. It's like you hire your guide to the creation of your character, and you go, I want this to be my character. How do I start? And the guides are like, come along with me. You have chosen a weapon of choice. You've chosen magic. Let us travel down the path of the weapon of choice and figure out where and find your pieces of your character with you.
Okay.
Yeah, like thinking about your processes when you guys build characters, like whether it be in video games, or Dungeons and Dragons, or Cast, or it doesn't matter what the system is. Do you guys see yourself now that I've sort of maybe explained this process that I'm thinking of, and obviously we're just sort of thinking this stuff on the fly. I don't have any of this written down or anything.
Well, no, yeah, it's everything we do.
Do you think that might be actually what you do?
Yeah, thinking on it, because, yeah, like thinking on it now, it's a lot of the times on characters that I've made, it's generally like I'll pick a very broad weapon category, let's go with.
Yeah.
And then build a character kind of around that, and then pick a thing. And like when I said it's generally a later thing, I usually meant like the specific one, but I was also thinking in D&D terms, because you get a class, right? You pick what class you want to do, and that also kind of dictates what weapon set your availability is and how you're going to play. Yeah. So it still kind of runs along the same lines. But yeah, weapon choice is very important.
Yeah, it is. It's okay.
It's a very guiding.
Do you have anything that you want to add?
I like what we were talking about the evoking of imagery when you pick things.
Yeah.
Because with the chopper, for example, it is a very clear image that is very different from the other two characters, and like these things happen all the time. And my favorite is in the anime or the manga Berserk, where they portray Guts and Griffith. And not only is the imagery and the way that they're done differently, like Guts is all in heavy armor, black, his weapon of choice is a great sword. Griffith is always in white, very long flowing hair, silver armor that's very light, and he wields a scimitar. But if the weapons were changed, the characters would be less believable and the imagery would be less believable, I find.
Yeah.
Guts would be less terrifying if he wielded a tiny little shitty sword, whereas Griffith wouldn't make sense if he was wielding something that was like 10 times the size of him, whereas Guts, in his heavy armor and his stature and his weapon all makes sense. Like, it's all nice and tied up in a little bow. Whereas the exact same thing with Griffith is like just the way that they are as characters, even in the show, like their weapon choice ties in really nicely. Like, if I didn't see Guts wielding the sword that he did, or wasn't known for how famous he is for wielding it, I would automatically assume that guy is going to be using something twice the size of him. And, like, same with Griffith. You got to be using something tiny. Like, look at those little... Like, that is a charismatic little man. Like, he can't be using, like, Barry the Chopper-sized weaponry. So I find, like, even when I make my characters, I find I'm always thinking of the image first.
Yeah.
And then I think when I'm building my characters, it's important that my choices not only in weapon but in armor, can evoke a strong image or the same image in the other players that I'm playing with, because they should have a very good idea of what I am, how I play, and how I'm going to be playing by the things that I've chosen on my sheet.
Yeah. So, honestly, I think the surprise conclusion that we've drawn, like, we're not quite done. We're going to enter the donjon or whatever, but like the sort of weird conclusion that we came to, because I approached this thinking, okay, you build your character and then you choose your weapon of choice, and the conclusion we came to is probably not the case at all. Weapon of choice is probably the first and final component. Like it is probably the most important component to your character. And how do I solve problems? It's like, I would like to solve problems this way. And yeah, the analogy of a guide, of like you've hired a guide to like take you through and discover your character, to me is the most like, my mind expands into the outer reaches kind of analogy that like you're talking about guts or whatever, right? Like if you have a really bad guide, he'll take you on this mission, on this journey, and you'll build this really ridiculous character that doesn't follow the tropes that would make sense.
Yeah.
So like, I'm gonna build this wiry little nerd guy with a giant two-handed sword, and he wields it normally, like he doesn't even care. Like it's all like this isn't like a weak guy carrying a weapon too big for him trope. Where this is just he's just real skinny. He's got a big pot belly, or he's like a huge neck beard, and he can barely run a mile, but he just wields that sword like a master. Like, what? Okay, sure. Is it believable? No. And if you use this guide and you sort of go through the sort of imagery that's in your head, like the tropes or whatever that you're using correctly, I don't know. It's the guide analogy is perfect, but what it kind of means to me is like, stick to the tropes. And I don't know how much I like that. I like the idea of like...
There are ways you can get around using the tropes, I think.
Yeah.
Because Shooty made a character that was a bit outside the tropes. And he used it to great effectiveness against, most specifically, my character during his game. Mm-hmm. He created a rogue that was a half-orc, so the idea that automatically gets in your head is a big guy, right?
Yeah.
100%.
And, like, yeah, he wielded a two-handed great axe.
Okay, so he did the great axe stealth character?
This great axe stealth character, and it worked. Like, the guy... he became a running joke because he failed so many times. Shooty just kept rolling ones on his stealth check.
Yeah.
So we just kept finding him. But eventually he rolled a decent number, and he was gone. Yeah. And he got a critical strike stealth attack on my warlock character. Like, he jumped off a roof and just slammed the fucking great axe down on top of me, and I almost died in that one single hit. And it was scary. Like, holy shit. This guy who has been failing, because, big guy, he's trying to be stealthy, and he's just failing.
What a joke.
Yeah, what a joke, right? And then suddenly he just comes out of nowhere and almost one-shots my character.
He's like, when it works, boy, it works real well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, that's interesting. But even then, the guy could take you on that. Like, I guess as long as you're cognizant of what you are, like, and this is the art form of character design, I think, too, right? Like, is how well your guide can take you on your little journey of discovering your character, and how much you can recognize as part of a sort of a trope, and what is like breaking convention.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate to subvert expectations,
yeah.
And does it work mechanically within your game with your character?
Or even if you don't care about mechanics, it's like, when does it work well thematically with your character or against it?
In stories like that, where somebody gets really lucky and does something.
Because mechanically, it didn't work at all, obviously, because he kept failing or whatever. And I'm sure the axe didn't, and in the double axe thing in Skyrim, it didn't do him any favors.
No, like, it's only times 2 damage. I will only ever get times 2 damage.
But I don't know. And you said it looked really goofy, but the point was, that character was a character who had decided this, like, you know, probably part of his weapon of choice was stubbornness. I don't like using knives. I'm no good with them. I use big axes because they do more damage, and I'm an assassin. Like, I don't know. I don't know what his thinking was, but like I can see this character forming in my head, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a stubbornness to do what is the most effective. And a belief that what you believe is the most effective is the most effective.
Well, it's fairly effective, to be honest.
Well, certainly, it almost one-punched you.
Some people
Well,
like
yeah,
the
it did.
shadows. I like chopping the shadows. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's really funny the idea that you're subverting expectations, but then playing into them in a way where it adds to your character and adds to like the overall enjoyment and entertainment of everyone else.
Yeah.
I think when you subvert expectations in that way, it works out. But I think when you're just subverting expectations to just be like silly and not get anything out of it, I find it's weird. Like, people need to play into like, oh yeah, he's stubborn and untraditional and he's just really weird and like awkward to be around, right? And
Yeah.
like on a stat, like in a system like 3.5, like picking a half orc for something like that would definitely show, and like your charisma score would be crap, like your constitution and strength would be huge, you'd be really bad at stealthing around, like because your dexterity would be crap. Like it's really funny to think of it like that, and then even better that you're forced to play into it.
Yeah.
I think the idea of playing into, like, because when you pick these things, like, yeah, like to go against a trope is kind of picking a trope itself. Like it's kind of like the Deadpool thing. Like we ran a Marvel campaign where I told my friend I was going to be Deadpool, and he's like, no way. And we did the rolls, and I got regenerative. Like, right away, he's like, you have a perfect healing factor. You're pretty much immortal. I'm like, perfect.
Here we go.
So, like, everybody expected one thing, but I always subverted expectation and created chaos in a way where it added to the game, and not where I was like, wait, hold down. We gotta find, like, a waffle stand or something. And just, like, no, I grabbed the artifact and just, like, cook it. Like, I want to expect it first or something. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like, like, weapon choice, like, for me, I think my weapon choice was just being an asshole. And, like, seeing how far that style of negotiation could get me. But it added to the character so much so that he has now made him a permanent PC in his game, or an NPC in his game, and I can't touch him anymore. Like,
You've lost all rights.
I've lost all rights to that character because I've picked something so weird. Like, he knew it was coming, but nobody else did.
Yeah.
Because just the way that I've built him, he's, like, very plain looking. He's always in, a weird Gucci suit that he doesn't like getting dirty or anything like that, but he's like a full-fledged, like, 5-star assassin he just doesn't tell anybody about, and it comes off like an asshole, so people just think he's like some rich asshole until they actually take a gun and shoot me in the face. Like, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
good.
okay. So, I guess just to sort of cap off the discussion, in a sense, before we enter the donjon, so it's interesting because no specific choice produces a good character, like a good character or whatever, but following the guide that is the weapon of choice through your character, how do I best describe? How do I best ask the question? I guess it's not really a question to ask. It's like how do you know what tropes are what? Like, I know we were talking about it. Like, I was talking about like orc with the chopper and like obsidian freaking chopping axe. You kind of get this idea of all these things, and I can explain my thought process there. But like, where did I get that thought process from? You know what I'm saying? Like, not where do I get thinking from, but like, where do these tropes come from? And like, if I want to get good at character design and understand the tropes, where would I learn this? Like, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like, because someone who has no idea of any of the tropes could just make up anything, and then people will be like, that doesn't make any sense. And you see that a lot actually with like kids who are just starting to play D&D and stuff. They're just like, I want to be Steven Universe, but with full plate, like that guy from Full Metal Alchemist, and I want to shoot cannons from my head. Bang.
Well.
Like, but like this is a character who's like, my weapon of choice is gonna be full plate and cannons from my head. And and you know, the way I got there, like, my guide has shown me that Steven Universe is who I want to be. Like the main character.
Yeah.
That's my character. did I do it right? You know, so like just an example like that. Like, and everybody has played, I think, unless you've only played with like really old, mature guys and girls or whatever. Everybody's had a player at least once like that does something really stupid.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's almost every game.
Yeah. So,
Like Sir Barrington.
So, yeah, Sir Barrington.
Sir Barrington
Civil
was
rights lawyer.
fine. Sir Barrington
Sir
was perfect.
Barrington was interesting. Let's go with interesting.
He was
and
a
be
bear.
Nice.
He was the Rosa Parks of bears.
That's right. You wanted bear civil rights.
Yep, bear civil rights.
Bear civil rights.
Um,
In this middle of nowhere, fucking backwater town. He fought for bear civil rights.
to that point,
And worked as a bouncer on weekends.
I feel that
Bears got to make a living. Honey's not free.
honey ain't cheap. Winnie the Pooh was homeless, okay? He was a drifter who just ate honey and pissed off a rabbit and got stuck in his window. It's probably his only fire escape. So if the inspector came in at that time, $5,000 rabbit fine right there.
Oh,
Those
jeez.
inspectors are ruthless. Anyway, off of that tangent, I think it's really important. Setting is super important. Yeah, a civil rights bear in the middle of a backwater town that does like weird stuff. Like, it works because it subverts an expectation where you're just like, what the hell is this? But like I find when you get to the table or like you even have a game or something like that, you agree that there's going to be a certain theme or even like a setting. And I find even with characters that want big old like space cannons and like they want to be Steven Universe and stuff, I find that you still as a guide have to ground them in the reality that you're playing in. Like, you don't have Space Guns McGee flying around your 3.5 in a spaceship and like laser
I said
guns,
a head
right?
cannon.
Head cannon. Right, head cannon.
Yeah, like stick the cannonball in and fire a cannon.
Oh my god, like oh wow, I didn't think about that at all.
Like cannonball cannon?
Yeah, like a
Or like a
cannonball
howitzer.
Cannon. I'm gonna say cannonball cannon.
Okay.
Okay.
Like on my
That-
head, like attached like a helmet, and it fires the cannonball from a cannon.
You better
attached
have
to
a
the top.
lot of neck support there.
That's fine. I'm Steven Universe.
That's my
He's all,
second
that
weapon
boy.
of
That
choice.
boy is all neck.
Neck support.
Neck strength. A really beefy neck.
Yeah.
Like,
Just has no neck. Is just.
I just assume I've got it.
like the imagery is hilarious.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's really important that guide should be like,
Well,
Boy, bud.
why is
Yeah.
why is
You're going to the
Why
loony
are-
bin
why is
things.
Cannon Head Steven Universe in full play in Alaric full play? Why is he a bad character compared to, you know, let's say Orc-Wit the Obsidian Chopper, which I think we all kind of were like, ooh, that's kind of fun. You know, why is one character bad and one character good? And how does a person get to the point where they make good characters
Okay, I
and
got
not
this.
Steven Universe characters?
Okay, Elric brother with head cannon, Steven Universe,
We call him Cannon Head.
Cannon Head.
Cannon head.
Cannon
Okay.
Head isn't a bad character, but Cannon Head to fit in needs certain things. Like, a man who has a cannon attached to his head needs first thing we thought of, beefy neck. Like, you gotta have a beefy neck. Like, I think if you want to play these characters, that whoever is doing this game should be free to add stipulations that make it real. Like, headcanon guy probably doesn't hear very well. He probably has brain damage from firing a cannon from his head. Like, these would be super funny things that you add to a roleplay setting.
So you're saying that headcanon Steven Universe Alaric armor is of equivalent value to Orc-Wit the Obsidian Chopper? Like these are both characters of the same caliber of design?
Without anything done to headcanon, no.
No.
But with additions and things to support it, I think headcanon would be just as great of a character, if not a funnier character, mind you, than our
Orc-Wit.
Chopper guy, right? Like,
Yeah. I think it would depend a lot on what kind of game you're playing. If you're going for something more serious, like I'm going to raise an army to take down the king because he's a tyrant or whatever, you go with
And
Orc-Wit.
my headcanon.
And
He says he'll join you.
Well,
slamming his head into the hand pile.
They killed my parents and took my neck. I'll have my revenge.
I'll show them what no neck means.
he would be more suited for kind of a silly campaign, one where everyone's on the level that it's like
so it was like
weird stuff's gonna happen.
It was like Dr. Predox. He didn't go. Sorry, no, I almost said Mr. Predox. He didn't go to Predox
University for nothing.
Yeah, 6 years of Predox University for nothing. So Dr. Predox was saying the setting is very important to what determines these choices. So
like headcanon guy I could see fitting in very well.
So take a look at the context in which you're building your character and determine what tropes make sense.
Yeah.
So if you're playing the Looney Tunes game, you can make your furry coyote that shoots poison
Lasers
darts out of its toe.
Sure.
I'm just playing Mad Libs right now, figuring out what the heck,
Just insert words. It'll
insert
eventually work
words,
out.
and Looney Tunes can kind of do anything, but if you're obviously trying to play to the feel of Looney Tunes, you're not gonna make some character whose weapon of choice is pathos and and like has a backstory about being physically manhandled in their past for time and again.
Yeah.
What
Just
would Dr.
jump in,
Predox
dude.
like to say?
I actually disagree with our conclusion.
Really?
Because it limits players' ability to choose how they want to roleplay. So if we're all about the weapon of choice, why are we being like, oh, you can't go to that armory, it's too silly for you? Like, I find that people that have silly characters have more expectations towards them as players to try to balance that silliness with the fact that we're running a serious campaign. Like, I would love to overthrow a king as headcanon. Because it'd be funny. Like, not only could you get, like, his entire backstory and, like, weapon choice of a headcanon down to, like, a T, but I think it would actually be a very great addition to a party that would be, like, all people that are, like, guts, that would be like, oh, my family's so weird, and, like, oh, they died, and, like, stuff like that. Like, yeah, everybody's been through, like, the tragic Batman backstory and everything like that, right? Like, but what if Superman came and it was just like, I have a headcanon? Like, yeah, that'd be so great. Like, there's a reason why they get Batman, who's like this, oh, my parents are dead. Like, he's shitty. Like, nobody likes following Batman. Everybody likes everything about Batman, but doesn't actually like Batman. Where Superman is the exact opposite. Everybody loves Superman. He's a great guy, but, like, fuck his stories. But, like, you put them together and they create great foils to each other. So, like, without limiting your player's experience, but, like, catering and being that great guide and being like, no, let's go check out the silly blacksmith. Let's go get you a headcanon. Like, there has to be consequences within a setting, of course. Like, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, your neck snaps when you fire the cannon.
But, like, I find if you tune it up and become real, like, you shouldn't be limiting your players in any respect like that. Like, we had a goblin in our...
So this is what following the guide means.
Yeah, this is what following the guide means.
Alright, you can have your headcanon, but we're playing in a setting that's fantasy and somewhat realistic. We're not playing in Looney Tunes where the headcanon would work. So we have to go an extra little distance to get to your headcanon land, and we have to find a way to make it real.
Yeah.
So maybe your headcanon is fused to your Alaric armor, so it's all one big thing. So you can just like brace yourself and then fire where you're looking. Sure, that sounds pretty cool. Why not? That okay. Now we're doing that. Now, why do you have this custom armor? Oh, I don't know. And like, why does the cannon load from the front or from the back? Like now.
Maybe you're just possessed armor like Elric and the cannon works because there's nothing in it.
So
right?
I guess the conclusion is follow, like, this is a process. Weapon of choice starts at the beginning at conception of your character, and you have to follow the logic of your setting and of the setting that you're playing in to determine in order to make any weapon of choice that's correct. And I think I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Any weapon of choice can be good as long as you can make it work. And making it work involves the closer you can get to the feel of the setting without going in some sort of Looney Tunes direction, or if you're playing Looney Tunes, some sort of dark and brooding serious direction, right? Like, without like tromping all over the sort of feel of the game that everybody wants to play.
Yeah.
Except you, obviously, who's playing headcanon Alaric guy. But if you can turn headcanon Alaric guy into a better character than everybody else's character just by following the guide better. Following your guide and getting to a point where every question that anybody could just basically ask right off the top of their head to like say this is a stupid idea, you answer it. Suddenly your character is like, he's tight, he's down, he's been nailed down, he's perfect. Headcanon guy makes perfect sense. I'm the Steven Universe guy, all right? I came from another dimension called Steven's Universe, right? And I picked up this Alaric armor, fused a cannon to it, and we shot the cannon's fused to my armor so it doesn't knock my neck back, I don't die, or you know what? My neck is fused to my body, it literally can't because I got superpowers, or who knows what. Who knows what goofy idea you come up with that works in your setting. But the better the character is, basically the success of the character is how good he can fit into
the
world and how good he can represent what you're trying to do. So the easiest way is obviously follow the very common tropes, the rogue with the knife. But if you're not trying to do a rogue with a knife, if your weapon of choice is a great axe, but you want to be a stealthy great axe user, how well does your character follow that line of reasoning? It's like, I want to be a stealthy axe character. So it's like, why? Like, why would you do that? Because that's way outside of the norm. It doesn't make sense. You're trying to sneak around in a hallway and the axe is clanging on the suits of armor that are decorating the damn mansion. Like, what are you doing? It's like, well, this axe is, I don't know, my father. What? Now that's interesting, but that's ridiculous. Like, please elaborate. It's like, yeah, my family's soul is in this axe. My soul will be there too. That's why I use the axe. Can't use anything else. Sadly, I'm a sneaky guy. Or whatever. So it's like, maybe that's your lot. Like, this is now a curse. But like, suddenly that character's a lot more realistic in like a high magic fantasy setting where things like that might happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, where like ancestral weaponry and things might become a thing. Like, who knows? And that suddenly is an interesting character. That's actually a more interesting character than the guy with the knife.
Yeah.
Because he had to explore why he's got this thing, and now this has created depth. But without that, he's just like, yeah, why are you carrying an axe? Because I want to. Like, now the guy with the knife is better.
Yeah.
Because he's following the trope more appropriately, and he's not ruining his own character concept, which is stealth, I guess. Or ruining his own character concept, sneaky axe, or axe with, like, I do it because, like, I use my axe by being sneaky. It's like, that's not really usually how you use an axe.
No.
You're supposed to swing it. It's like, yeah, but I ought not to swing it. Instead, I want to stay hidden until the opportune time to strike. With an axe. If the opportune time to strike is in the cellar where the axe can't hit.
Always off of roofs, jumping off all Ezio.
Yeah, every single time. You just gotta wait on a roof until the guy comes down. Then you jump down with the axe and you win.
Yeah, that's how he won last time against my character. He jumped off the roof and won.
I think that's a pretty good conclusion. Like, does anybody?
No, I think that's a great
conclusion. I think we finally nailed it.
Yeah,
all right. Let's enter the donjon and see what we have to say then.
The donjon.
The donjon. Let's see what the Dawn has to say. So, next episode is weapon of choice, magic or mundane, or just in general. In general, it doesn't have to be literal. I don't think he got it right away, because I answered later. So, weapon of choice. There are 4 factors that influence your weapon of choice. 1. What the setting allows. Oh, interestingly, we kind of covered it. You're not going to have assault weapons in a pre-gunpowder setting.
True.
Okay, fair enough. Unless you can explain why, I guess. Flavor. The guy who makes the spike chain user that can trip and disarm, and that weapon is his cool, it's a special thing, or oh man, this is word salad. Or you did a guy with a glaive for one of my games, attack of opportunity guy, it was this thing, it was his flavor. Okay, it was flavor. Okay,
personal preference.
Yeah, personal preference. And then 30 stereotypes. I'm a dwarf, I have an axe because I'm a dwarf. I'm a thief, I use daggers because that's what thieves use.
Imagery.
So yeah, this is sort of what we're talking about too. He's a little bit less, but he didn't have an hour to talk it out with 2 other guys. Metagame, I'm using a sword because I know that the biggest percentage in random item tables is a sword, and I want the random loot drop to work for me.
I wouldn't exactly agree that should be a component in your weapon decisions.
No,
but he does say that's the metagame.
Does make sense.
Yeah.
So
I can't say I haven't run through Dark Souls with that in mind as well. Like,
So, like, to be fair, yes, that is a thing. Does that make your character more effective? No, but swords are common as spit for a reason, and they kind of work for everybody. I use a sword. Okay, that means you're just a plain Jane dude who fights plain Jane style.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know something ridiculous, right? Yeah. Speaking of the stereotypes, I have a dwarf. I have an axe because I'm a dwarf. We kind of talked about that. That's sort of the like, you know, my weapon of choice is I want to use an axe. You know, sometimes people pick the dwarf thing first. Like and like they pick their race first, but you know, like you don't have to pick it first. But usually right after they pick that dwarf, it's like, what am I going to use?
Yeah,
hammer,
and so
axe,
you know,
yeah.
Dwarven things.
you pick the dwarfy thing because why not, right?
Yeah, you're still playing into like the stereotypes and your flavor, like just like Don said.
Yeah, it's just you've chosen a stereotype first and you've worked backwards, and then you kind of go back on that exploration.
You check the depth before making the jump.
Yeah, pretty much. So weapons, what's allowed? That's the GM setting. The parameters for your choice usually be by system, by books you're using. Flavor I like. I always had the idea about Spike Chain or the Dagger Thrower guy, and they'd be special for their flavor more than the twink damage. So yeah, he's basically saying it looks like he's saying it's kind of better to pick just the flavor for your character over, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
Like I think that was the premise we're running on is
Yeah.
it's more successful when it's about your character rather than about the freaking raw die number of your game.
Yeah.
Stereotypes in metagame I don't often care for. They're not for the character, they're laziness. They're for the player to get loot. Yeah, so metagame is silly. Don't play to the metagame. Like,
Yeah, don't do that.
To like, something I often do in D&D style games is when we find magic items, I try to get it like the enchantment moved. So it's like, and it's something that most GMs that I play with, and I do myself. If you find cool magic gear, sometimes you can find like an enchanter or something who can move the enchantment from one weapon to a weapon of equivalent, like, you know, they can't move like a really nice enchantment to a piece of crap weapon,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but maybe to a similar type of weapon that's also like a mastercraft or, you know, able to hold an enchantment, right?
Yeah.
So I do like the idea of it, like if you find your Vorpal longsword, maybe if you use a hammer, well, obviously Vorpal hammer is just a little bit silly, but you know what I mean? Like if you use an axe, you can like have
For
it
every skull
moved.
you crush, it transports that cursed skull to another dimension.
But that's something worth
I guess.
considering if GMs never thought of that, like thought of that concept. Like
Yeah.
maybe moving enchantments from one piece of gear to another, and it
I
just
like
so
that.
happens that enchantments that when you find it, the enchantment's on, you know, the chakram instead of the longsword you normally use.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be interesting.
Yeah. Next room. I guess there's a fifth factor. That's your class role support. Oh, I hate this kind of crap.
Yeah, that's,
Characters or mages are more likely to use range weapons, frontline fighters. Yeah, the Dawn is really into that. Like that's he sort of grew up with third, and then he plays a lot of MMOs. So
you play your role.
you play your role. You know, tank DPS, range DPS. You know, range or frontline DPS,
Healer.
off tank healer.
carry.
Yeah.
Like, things
You know,
like that.
carry if you're playing like a Dota.
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes by that, and I reject it. I think that kind of that mentality is the stupidest thing that ever came out of video games. Like, why would any monster, creature, arc lich, anything that you fight ever focus attention on the guy he can hurt the least? Why?
True.
That's an
It's just,
interesting premise.
you know, like, provoking it makes sense. Like, I understand that idea, but
You can't be a provoking presence. Like, if I'm going to fight people, I'm not going to pick the biggest guy that looks like who could take 20 punches.
the old Shadowrun
Yeah,
saying
no,
"cack the pointy
there's-
hat" is like real acute. You know, the guys who focus on the DPS and they don't focus on like, look at all those weak guys over there. I'll just kill them all, and then I'll kill you guys, or I'll kill that guy who constantly is healing you. Like, whoa.
Yeah. No, I get that too, and I find I tend to take that way of thinking into like other games that I play as well.
Yeah.
Like War Thunder or World of Tanks. Like I'll take out the little guys that I know I can remove quickly to reduce the number of
Yeah.
things firing back at me.
Oh yeah,
fantasy tactics.
But that's
It's
a
a
standard
tactic.
Dota tactic too. Don't fight the tank. Are you dumb?
Yeah, no.
Like sometimes they make you do it because they have special skills in Dotas that make you do it, and it's the same thing with art tabletop games. No one. If you had a legion of horsemen, and you had a choice to attack archers or spearmen,
You take the archers.
both are dug in, right? The dug in spearmen or the dug in archers. The horsemen go for the archers. Even if the spearmen are going, oh, you're a loser, you're a loser. It's like, nah, how about we just ignore that shit and we're going to go kill your archers now? And they're like, wait, what? We're dug in. You come on over here, Bo.
You can't do this.
You can't
We
do
got a
that.
plan.
What is this?
We've got taunt. I've got aggro.
Fuck your aggro, I'm going this way.
Yeah, I hate that. It is this terrible trope, and it doesn't work in tabletop gaming if people are not polluted with MMORPG concepts.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, yeah, sometimes you can intimidate and provoke people to attack you. Like, I get that. That's a thing. That does happen. But this idea that that's actually a measure of whether a monster is going to attack you or not, like having an aggro meter is just... Like, anything of any moderate intelligence is going to realize right away what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, I just got hit and it hurts from that, and I'm not getting hurt from this. I'm going to turn around and go kill that. And yeah, I understand in some MMOs, like, they have aggro meters and things like that, where it's like, oh, you're yeah. No! It's stupid. It's a stupid concept, and it's... You know, I understand that it's evolved quite a ways, and you can justify a lot of things that's going on there with whatever thematic shit that they're doing, but ultimately it's stupid. Because, especially when it comes to jank characters like raid bosses and stuff, like, they can literally turn around, like, fart, and one of any cloth or whatever, like, mage character, DPS character will die instantly. One shot. Done. Like, it's literally zero effort to kill all those guys. Whereas with the tank, it's just like, it's, for all of his hit points, he'll be sitting there swinging, doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know, why? You know, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's just a stupid, sloppy mechanic that just happens to be a thing about MMOs. And it allows people to have these really big, like, raid-style events, which I think are stupid and don't make sense in the first place, for the most part. I really hate that about MMOs. They're stupid. I hate MMOs. Next room.
I think we've noticed.
How about non-weapon weapons of choice, like bare-handed or natural weapons like claws? It's like intimidation or investigation. He's like, oh, a good question. I immediately went to the list of weapons in the PHB. It's like negotiation as a weapon is an interesting approach. Spoiler alert: I'm having it used in my sequel. Okay, he's talking about his book. The bandits want less potential harm. Rattle the idea of non-lethal weapons in your brain cage. Okay, next room. For some reason, all that comes to mind was that filler Naruto episode. The kid wanted to be a ninja, rich daddy, money element, ninjutsu.
Oh my god, I remember
Guys
that.
just dove for the money and then helped him out. Non-literal weapons, money, language, intimidation based on size. Lackeys too, I guess. Followers give you numbers, won't work for low levels necessarily, but strength in numbers. Yeah, these are all examples, okay. Conventional, unconventional weapon combos, intimidate with words and size and skill check, and see if the DM will let you pound your great club on the table for added effect. The conventional weapon choice has to fit the unconventional weapon. The two, someone in the writer form. Okay, that's a different topic. Sorry, talk about different things. So that was the dungeon. The Don didn't say too much this time. I think our conversation got a bit more in depth than the donjon realized. And honestly, the weapon of choice, I think it's subtly really complex. We sort of narrowed it down to this, like, analogy of a guide or whatever, but it's like weapon of choice is almost like character design.
It is definitely a large part of what is your character.
And when you call it weapon of choice, people just like, oh yeah, I use it. And I think people take it for granted. Now that I'm actually, like, just looking at what the Dawn said, maybe the big lesson from the Dawn here is it's like, it's so taken for granted that it doesn't, people don't even think about what they're taking. It's like, oh yeah, I take a dagger because I'm rogue.
Well, yeah, I did it too. Like, at the beginning when you guys asked, like, when do you take your weapon? I was just like, yeah, you take it later, whatever. It's just a weapon.
Yeah.
But no, it's more than that.
Yeah, it's your entire approach to solving problems. It's like, how do I want to play? So it weapon of choice is almost like just like a synonym for character design.
Yeah.
And
What do you want your character to be?
yeah, making it probably, I'm still gonna say, probably gonna be the most important aspect of the whole series. Like I'm looking at what's coming up next. There's only 3 more episodes of iCharacter before we're done.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we
Just flying through these.
well, once a week, right?
Yeah.
Also, apologies for not being on time this week. I was too busy swimming with bikini-clad ladies, so I was into that.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
It was also a holiday, so I figured a delay is fine. So I apologize if you were really upset about that. I hope that you would all let me know in the comments, because I'm lonely. I don't get to see enough of the comments.
I didn't get to go swimming with bikini-clad ladies. I did get to go with sushi afterwards, though.
That is true. You
That
did
was
do
good.
that. That was good. Because, yeah, you didn't get the memo that the podcast was canceled, so when we came
Yeah,
home,
no,
you were just
somebody
sitting in my basement.
Yeah, somebody sent it to me on the wrong... Well, not the wrong, but I didn't go
You
on.
didn't check that one.
Yeah, no,
That's
I wasn't
fair.
on my computer
That's
the
fair.
whole
That all
day.
worked out for the best. You got sushi out of it.
I did get sushi out of it. It was delicious.
So, okay. Well, now that we're out of the donjon and we've safely escaped, does anybody have any closing comments about weapon of choice?
I'm surprised how much it actually matters. Like, I'd always kind of given some thought to it, but to kind of see how, like, everybody else comes in and figures it out.
Yeah.
Like, because I played with people that are like, yeah, just give me whatever my class comes with, and I played with people that are like, hold up, no, it's, like, super important that I figure these things out. Like, I had one guy I played with who wanted to be a dual-wielding, two-hander lizard man, and it made sense. He's just a really jack lizard person with a scythe and a greatsword. It was dope as fuck, but, like, goddamn. I didn't know, like, when I first started making characters too, it was just like, oh yeah, I guess I'm a rogue, I guess I'll use knives and shit, but like, later on as I started exploring, I'm like, oh, like, what if I'm an angel that just comes in the nick of time and like really uses a mercurial greatsword and just takes everything and crit? And like, there were times where I'd just come shining out of nowhere and be like, boom, and deal the damage that was like lethal damage to something that was like wrecking our game. Like, I don't know, it was a really cool concept for a character, and from that point on, I was like, weapon first, weapon concept first.
Yeah. I guess I've opened my eyes, I guess, to the idea of that, yeah, this is actually surprisingly more in-depth than I gave it credit for. And I think probably a lot of people overlook it. Like, when you think about it, when somebody says, well, what's your weapon of choice? Most people will just be like, yeah, I just use this thing. Or that thing. Or whatever. But it helps create your character in a way that nothing else really does. And yeah, just if you go get a good guide and run through, you could do fantastical things. Ooh, leg cramp. Ow.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just close by sort of reiterating the same thing that we reiterated a couple times already. Yeah, your weapon of choice, you know, the best analogy is the guide. You know, start vague, like start broad.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, melee range. I choose melee. Okay, what kind of melee? Greatsword. Okay, what does that mean? It means I don't know, I gotta be able to swing a greatsword around for a long time. What does that mean? I'm jacked. Or what does that mean? Well, I choose greatsword, but my weapon of choice is badly using a greatsword, so I'm not jacked. You know, I swing it around like as it's way too heavy for me. Okay, like it's Buster Sword and the guy who can't wield it. So sometimes when he does wield it, it just swings over once and bam, takes a turn or who knows what. Like, anyway, you follow your trope, and then the most successful way to attain a good character using your weapon of choice is to logically reach an acute sort of ending.
Yeah.
That matches with the setting and the feel of the game that you guys want to play and the feel of the character you want to create. So, you know, if you go completely off topic from what you actually wanted to make, you know, your character's not going to be as successful. And likewise, if you go completely off topic with the way that the setting, you know, everybody else and the GM have all decided we're going to play, you know, it's not going to be a very successful character. People will look on it maybe as a character that
Oh.
might be funny if you're lucky, and with scorn if you're not.
Yeah, a liability.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the liability.
Yeah, or the guy who like ruins everyone's fun by making the game not interesting if you've got a lot of players who really like intense kind of like drama role play. Which,
Yeah.
you know, I've played with people like that, and yeah, they sometimes get really upset if you crack too many jokes, you know. And that's just because drama's hard to get in a role playing game, and comedy's really easy.
Yeah.
Like,
That
people
is
laugh
true.
at shit all the time, and getting like into your character to the point where you feel like you're actually there is hard, is really hard. But it happens. People can get there, and they can get that like zone, and people will go for that.
Yeah. It can be great.
Yeah. So next week, on time, so next Monday, will be Primary Motivation. My path is set. Where we'll be discussing just that, and we'll compare it probably to Weapon of Choice, and see if your primary motivation is really the, you know,
The be-all,
as a yeah. I thought it was at the time. Maybe I don't think that now.
Yeah,
But we'll have to find out next week, and hopefully you'll find out next week too when you tune in. Hit that like button because we like getting likes here. Hit that subscribe button so that you can get more information. And if you want to listen to this on a podcast, I'm going to work on that. But until that time, there are some ways that you can convert YouTubes to audio podcasts.
Yep.
And you should just do that.
There you go.
With that said, leave a comment if you have anything to say about Weapon of Choice. Or heck, if you just want to talk about how bad I am at making radio shows, you go right ahead. I'll read them and I'll respond. I'll probably even give you one of those little hearts. Because you're so uncommon. And thanks again to the Dawn. Thanks again to the Spartan and Dr. Predox.
Please no.
Dr. Predox for coming on the show. Everybody's great. You all out there, you take care and don't die.